Let's show us the logo, if you would.
Yes, let's see. So,
Oh, great, you have a great big picture. Wonderful. And it's funny, on the website it said green, but it really looks teal to me, like a teal.
I actually I had it printed out, and when it came out, I realized it wasn't exactly the color. So it's actually a little bit more bright green.
Okay, well, on my computer, it looked a little bit like that too, but either way, we can look for it. So Farm Responsibly ASC certified, and it matches a little bit that MSC, Marine Stewardship Council. It looks like a very similar logo because you're sister organizations, right?
Yes, I think it was set on purpose to make sure it shows.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So that should be on a product that we look for at the grocery store.
Yes.
We will either want to look for MSC or ASC. Now, I did ask at MSC as well, Jackie, I asked about this. If where I'm in the store and I don't see MSC or ASC, are there any other logos or standards that are reputable that we can look for as second best?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are some, I would say there are some tools available the consumers can look for in addition to choosing AC and MSC level seafoods. For example, WWF publishes the Sustainable Seafood Guide in many countries. So that's something consumers can look for. And I think in US, Monterey Bay Aquarium is quite relevant, and they set recommendations based on their Seafood Watch guidelines.
Yes.
So just to explain a little bit, both of these are based on traffic light system. So green means it's fine to eat, and yellow means you should be careful to consume it, and red means the consumers should avoid eating those species altogether.
And they're looking at similar standards. They're just not a certifying agency like you are. I think that was important to clarify that MSC and ASC are programs where a farm or a fishery, wild caught fishery, can get the certification and they meet X, Y, and Z. Whereas the Seafood Watch program it's more about the organization saying, here's the fish we see are getting overfished or have too much mercury in them and things like that.
Yes, we would call them like benchmarking systems.
Yes.
So ours is a program where the farmers actually, or MSC, where the farmers and fisheries engage with us, they get certified and agree voluntarily to follow our standards. While these benchmarking systems just looks at stocks and looks at the different impacts the species have and set recommendations. So,
it's a little bit more broad because it's saying this is a whole species of fish and this is in general how it's fished. That's what the Monterey Bay does. And then yours is more, this exact farmer followed these rules and you can trace it back. It's a little more specific. Yes. Yeah, that's a good clarification. And I wasn't really clear on that difference before. So it's the MSC and ASC to me seem like the gold standard. You know exactly what you're getting, and the others is more general guidelines.
Yeah, I would say
all good, but just
exactly. When there's not a certified option available,
right,
these machine systems can give consumers a broad guidance of the seafood selection. But I think it's important that people understand the criteria behind them and what the category means.
Yes, yeah, to do the research. Good. Okay, great. We talked about the water. So here's a question about the feed that I've always been a little confused on. And as I read through your website, I found out that there's marine feed, terrestrial plants, which is earth plants, right?
Yeah.
And then terrestrial animals. So earth animals fed to fish. And so could you give an example on what a fish would eat in the wild versus what it would be fed? You've told us already a little bit about what trout might be fed, but what do trout, if trout's the example or a different fish, what would they eat on their daily life? I'm imagining like the baby fish, and then maybe it eats different things as it gets bigger.
It's a good question. So taking the example on trout again, in the wild, trout mainly feeds on invertebrates. So that's crustaceans or mollusks or flies and insects that lives in the rivers and lakes. Or maybe they drop down from the water from trees and plants on the banks, but they also feed on other small fish. So it's a mix. And feed for farm trouts, it consists of fish meal and fish oil from marine fish ingredients, and then protein from other animal ingredients as well. And also plant protein from ingredients such as soy, as well as starch, maybe from wheat or corn. So that is.
And I guess that's where I get really concerned, to be honest, about, because, for example, cows. You know, we know in the wild, a bison, the ancestor of the cow, you know, or a cow just eats grass and hay, and they eat plants that they can get to easily in a pasture. And then as a farmer, some farmers introduce corn and soy and things into the diet, which is not what they would, like a cow would not probably walk up and eat an ear of corn. So then if we say a fish wouldn't either, because unless that corn is dropping into the water, they're not. So how are we impacting the nutritional profile when I eat that fish, if they're eating things that they wouldn't eat in the wild?
Yes. I think it's come back to the sustainability issue and the questions as well, because feed is amongst the most impactful aspects of aquaculture on Algarve. And despite the often heard claim that aquaculture uses fish to feed fish, nowadays 75 to 80% of the fish ingredients are actually derived from terrestrial agriculture.
Interesting.
Yeah. And there's been various factors that steer the aquaculture industry towards reducing the use of fish meal and fish oil. That's actually the marine ingredients, and replace it with non-marine fish ingredients. And you know, this the sustainability issue often come in question.
So the sustainability is about saying, let's not catch fish to feed to the fish, because then we're still using wild fish to feed to the farm fish, right? That's the sustainability. And I get that, because some people will say, well, let's be vegan because it's more sustainable. We can grow more plants than we can grow protein. It's an interesting thing. But are there ways to use the parts of fish? Like, let's say you have a wild caught harvest of fish or seafood of some sort, and there's some parts that are going to market for the people to eat, but there's probably a lot of parts that get thrown away. Like, I'm thinking, you know, we probably don't use all the whole fish.
The scraps and the...
Does that become fish meal? Is that what fish meal is?
Yes, part of it is fish meal, that's scraps and leftovers, but there's also some fish species that has very low value, such as krill, for example, that's starting to become overfished. They will go to fish meal, but also to pet food, cat food, and so forth. But just the pressure and the demand for that started to put such a pressure on them, they became overfished. So that's an issue that they have to deal with for quite some time. And the situation with aquaculture sector is, in the end, it means now they're more or less completely reliant on the agriculture industry. It's traded off the environmental impacts from fish meal and fish oil production to agriculture impacts that can then have equal, if not bigger, impacts on the environment. So I like to come to this because AEC is now developing a feed standard that focuses on addressing these negative impacts caused by production of raw material used in aqua feed. And that's not only the wild fish, but also the agricultural impacts from soy and soy production. And the feed standard seeks to find a way to promote the use of terrestrial crops still, but originating from lower risk areas to try to reduce the environmental footprint that I use. So you see how the sustainability discussions have led to certain consequences, and now we're trying to deal with this agricultural impact that's happening.
Like most things that I start researching, they're way bigger than I realize. You know, it's like that old expression, the more you know you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like the more you learn a little bit, you open the door and you're like, oh, I have a whole new thing to learn about. So I'm not sure how much the viewers will be as interested in this as I am, but I just want to circle back and kind of summarize. So it's like, okay, we can still choose wild caught fish, and if we're looking for something with the MSC logo or that's approved by these Monterey Bay Aquarium, or in our area we actually have a good catch program at the South Carolina Aquarium, so that's great. We can choose that and know that it's okay, that that is not overfished, and it's a good choice. And then if we're going to farm fish, really the way to go is to really make sure it's this ASC, because there's so many variables that the average consumer, unless we're going to go directly to the fish farm and interview them like I would, but you know, most people are not going to do that. It's just really hard to know. There's such a big impact. And I think what you're talking about in aquaculture, with the need to go and find this traceability and know it needs to happen in all forms of agriculture. I mean, that needs to be happening for people who are growing chickens and growing beef and those things too. So is there anything else about feed that you would share with us? And one question that came into my mind is, you were talking about soy. In the US, 90% of the soybean crop is genetically modified. And to me, I could be wrong about this, to me that means it's sprayed with Roundup.
It's an issue, or it's a question that's been discussed right from the start, I think, with ASC, and we're still developing the feed standard. So I cannot really say what and what's not going to be.
It's on your radar. You know that.
Yes.
You know that, yeah. Can you speak to any resources to help us know about the differences nutritionally between wild-caught fish and farm-raised fish?
Yes, I would say the fish is a great source of nutritional benefits, regardless of whether it's wild or farmed.
Sure.
So from us, we've seen studies that show some variance in specific nutrients between farmed and wild fish. And each study show more or less beneficial nutrients, such as omega-3, depending on the study. So because the differences are so minimal, we're dedicated to helping everyone understand the fish is always lean and nutritious.
So we're still in a good choice. If we've got a choice between a conventionally grown hamburger and a conventionally grown fish, it was still better off with the fish. So that's reassuring. Okay. Talk about population densities on farms. For example, in the USDA organic standard, if you're going to have chickens, there's a certain population density, meaning you can't cram thousands of them into a tiny cage and still call it organic. So to get the ASC certification, are there rules about how many fish can be in a small space?
Yes, I would like to mention first that when you see these photos, you often see photos of farms with loads and loads of fish crammed.
Yes, it makes me worried. I'm worried for them.
And that could that's quite alarming if you see that. But what you have to keep in mind is these are usually shot when the fish is fed.
Yes, to get them to come up and plop around, right?
So it's a great photo opportunity because the fish is fed, so you will see them, but it makes the density appear much higher than it is in reality because the fish flocks to the feed.
Yes.
So I tend to often not use them because I know it doesn't give a completely realistic idea, and I would think the same, you know, if I was initiated. Oh my God, there's so many fish in one space, but most of the time it's because they're being fed when you see those.
Okay.
I will give an example. We can take salmon as an example. Salmon has 98% of free roaming space still in the cages. That is how they were, how they're spaced out. So the salmon would have a lot of roaming spaces.
What does that mean when you say 98% roaming space? What would that look like for us? Help me visualize that.
So if they have the cage, 98% of the volume would be water. That's the net area.
Wow.
And only 2% would actually consist of the volume that the salmon is occupying. So.
Wow. So, for example, could we say that would be Scottish salmon?
Yeah, salmon. Depends on, similar if it's in Chile or in Scotland or Norway.